So the last time you saw the Echelon on the channel, the EPS right here was flying off and hitting me in the face with a supposed failure of the Optic mounting system. After doing more research, I've determined that I might have actually been incorrect about some things I said in that original video and decided to give the Echelon a second chance and put it to the test. So today we're going to find out, was I wrong about the Springfield Echelon? Now I want to make a correction on something I said in my original video. In the original video I said I used the Springfield Echelon screws and the recoil posts to install this optic. While I used the included recoil posts, recoil bosses, whatever you want to call them, I did not use the included screws. I thought the screws that I was given by the owner of this pistol were the screws that came with the Echelon. Well, in fact, there's no screws that came with the Echelon. He had actually given me the longest included screws that came with the EPS. Those are the screws I had Loctited, torqued to spec, all that good stuff into this pistol with this optic. However, clearly they were not sufficient. Now, upon checking Springfield's website, what I found out is they will not send you screws. You actually have to go out and buy screws for the Echelon if that optic requires it. And Springfield has a chart on their website saying which optics require screws from them and which ones you can use OEM screws. And upon checking Springfield's website on the HoloSun EPS, it says use OEM screws. And that's what I did. Now, obviously, those were not sufficient. They were way too short. They did not have enough thread engagement. So I went through my own reserves and collection over time of gun screws and parts and things from optics and firearms, and I found a set of screws that were much longer than the original ones I had and went basically all the way into the slide. So a lot more thread engagement, and I figured those might hold up a lot better. So I put in the recoil bosses once again, put a lot of nice Loctite on those screws, a generous amount, installed those screws to spec of 15-inch pounds, and then even put in some witness marks again so we can see if those screws backed out at all. Now, of course, it was time to test the newly remounted EPS. Was it going to hold up? Was it going to stay on the pistol? Or was it going to come flying off into my face again? And this time, instead of just incorporating it into my regular practice, just shooting in it, getting a feel of it, I decided to burn it down and put as many rounds as I could as quickly as possible through the Echelon. And I actually ended up getting the help of a couple buddies I went to the range with. And we put tons of rounds through this pistol, accelerating the original wear process that led to the launching of the EPS from the Echelon slide. I decided to do that in a much faster speed, also leading to a lot more heat. This pistol got very hot very fast. We ended up having to wear gloves, and this thing was nice and toasty. However, throughout all of that, I had no issues, no problems. The optic maintained zero. The optic did not come flying off. It kept working like a champ. So then it was time for what I was originally concerned about with the Echelon and with the gaps on the front and rear of the slide, or the front and rear of the optic. That is one-handed manipulations, or manipulating off the optic body. So we did all sorts of manipulations. Took a bunch of dummy rounds, loaded up in the magazines with actual ammunition, and did a bunch of tap rack drills. So we did one-hand manipulations, manipulating off of fixed objects. Another buddy of mine was manipulating off of his gear and equipment. And then another one was doing simply tap racks, manipulating off of the optic face itself. And throughout all of that, the optic stayed mounted to the pistol. The optic maintained zero issues whatsoever. And then for the final test. So when the EPS originally came off the Echelon, it was during a recoil test in which I was testing the Recoil Impulse with standard range ammo and 124 plus P through the Echelon. And after one round of 124 plus P, the optic came flying off the pistol. So this time I did a tire mag dump of 124 plus P ammo to see would the optic stay mounted this time after all that other testing we'd just done. And here's the results. Got 124 plus P, got a mag of it. We're gonna do a mag dump, see if the optic falls off again. So as you can see, the optic did not come flying off. Several rounds of 124 plus P, and it kept going. No issues whatsoever, no loss of zero, nothing like that. Not a single issue. So ultimately, it seems like I was kind of wrong about the optic system. Essentially, you just have to make sure you get screws that engage deep enough. Even if on Springfield's website it says you're good with the OEM screws, make sure your screws actually get enough thread engagement on here. Because it seems like when it does, you're not going to have a single issue. You just need to make sure you have enough thread engagement, or else those screws are going to strip right out. Now, I'm not blaming the owner of the pistol. While he did technically give me bad information about where these screws came from, or at least the original screws that I used to mount the optic, I should have done my own research. I should have checked Springfield's website and seen that they don't include screws that you have to actually go out and spend your own money again to get the proper optic screws, or you're supposed to use OEM screws that don't work either. So still a slight gripe with the optic system, but nowhere near as much of originally of the optic flying off. It seems as long as you get good screws that have good thread engagement, you're not going to have any issues with this optic system. So one of the other points of contention in my original review down in the comments section was comparing the Echelon's recoil impulse to the Glock 17. Specifically, that I was saying that the Glock 17 had a much better recoil impulse than the Echelon. So this time, I don't want you to just take my word for it. I had some of my buddies shoot the Echelon and this Glock 17 side by side and see which pistol they thought shot better.
All right, so we've got the Echelon and the Glock 17. We've got this guy right here, and he's going to shoot them both and form his own opinions on it. So, on you.
Glock first. The recoil going back to back. And the other thing for me personally, the texturing on the grip and the plastic, super slippery when you sweat. You get used to it, but it is noticeable. The major things.
Got another person here. Try the 17 and the Echelon. Form their own opinions. See how they like them.
I'm a Glock shooter. See how this works. So the Echelon is definitely more snappy than the standard Glock. I'm able to track my dot through both courses of fire. The Echelon feels a little funky in the hands. It's just a different grip angle than a Glock. And the texture pattern that they have on it is much like their Hellcat series. So the tighter you grip it, the more aggressive it feels. And I'm just not a big fan of that.
So as you can see, they pretty much agreed with me that or at least came to the same conclusion, that the Echelon definitely has a more noticeable recoil impulse than something like this Glock 17. Now ultimately, I think it is a weight balance issue, similar to something like the Walther PDP. I think it's a weight issue that causes the Walther PDP to be so snappy.
The front of the Echelon feels way more front heavy than the front of a Glock. So I feel like it's a weight issue where the weight distribution is in the pistol, because in reality, the weight of the pistols feel about the same. But I think the Echelon has more front heavy weight. And so when that slide's cycling and it's returning, it's kind of flopping you down more. And so it feels like a floppier pistol, like it's kind of going like this and kind of want to dip and shoot it.
But I don't think that is the end of the world for this pistol, though. I think it is still a very shootable pistol. Yes, you'll always be playing for second place, ultimately, because if this pistol here, this Glock 17, has a better recoil impulse out of the box, then no matter what you do to either of these two pistols, if you do the exact same things, this Glock 17 will always shoot better. And ultimately, when it comes to shooting, yes, the Echelon has a much better trigger, a better optic system, some better ergonomics. When it comes to actually shooting the pistol, you don't notice any of those things. All you really notice is the recoil impulse. So for me, at least, when it comes to shooting these pistols, I definitely find the Glock 17 still is the better shooting handgun. But there's plenty of other handguns out there, like the Walther PDP, like the SIG P320, that have a worse recoil impulse than the Glock 17 or other pistols, but they're still very shootable and very usable pistols. So just because the Recoil Impulse may not be as good as something like the Glock 17 doesn't mean the Echelon is bad. So one thing I do want to talk about, one issue we did have that day at the range, was with the magazines. When we were loading some steel-cased Winchester ammo into them, sometimes the follower would get locked up and it would not pop up all the way, and the rounds would end up kind of getting loose in the magazine.
So I was just loading the mag to put some more rounds through it, and we've run into a little malfunction. Let's see if we can fix this. Let's try it again. Let's try the brass. Maybe it just doesn't like steel in the magazine. All right, that's not good.
Now, I don't know if that was ultimately like a metal on metal issue where just the metal of the magazine interacting with the metal of the steel-cased rounds just wasn't compatible and was ultimately causing issues, or if it's a reliability issue with the magazine. I will say that never happened using any brass or nickel-plated ammo. That was only with the steel case, so I'm going to assume that was the issue, but I at least wanted to bring it up. I wanted to address it, so that way if someone's having a similar issue, maybe it is just a steel case ammo issue, or maybe there is a reliability issue with these magazines. But even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Echelon, I am going to give it the benefit of the doubt and say I think it was just an issue of the steel-cased ammunition. Alright guys, so that was the update on the Springfield Echelon. Ultimately, my main thoughts on the Echelon did not change. I'm still not a major fan of this pistol. It's a usable pistol. It does the job, but it's nothing to me at least to write home about. However, my biggest critique and my biggest concern, which was the optic system, has since proven to not be a concern. As long as you have the proper thread lengths and you have good screws that get some good screw depth in the slide, you're not going to have any issues. So if you like the Hellcat, if you just like Springfield, or if you just like the Echelon, I think it's a very solid contender, and I don't see any issues with using this pistol. Alright guys, if you enjoyed the video, if you appreciate the time, money, and effort I put into retesting and reevaluating the Echelon post that incident, go and leave a like down below. If you think I'm a no good, evil, terrible Glock shill and I'll never review any pistol as highly as I would a Glock product, go and leave a dislike down below, but also maybe go watch my Glock 48 video, because apparently I'm also a Glock hater, even though I'm a Glock shill. Yeah, I don't get it either. But otherwise, guys, head in the comments. Let me know what you think about the Echelon, what you think about the Glock, hell, what you think about the SIG P320. Give me your thoughts down below. What is your preferred pistol, and do you think the Echelon ultimately does something new and special compared to all the other offerings already on the market, or do you think it's just that, just another offering in the striker-fired market? So that's it for today, guys, so go ahead, subscribe, and stay tuned for future videos.